it kind of brings me to, I don't know. I've been having an interesting way of trying to articulate this. I was doing a live Instagram thing earlier today and kind of got on this subject a little bit. And to your point about like too many pedals and so on and so forth, it doesn't matter. It's like, and I know you're of the same mind. Like, look, if you want to play with a lot of pedals, go ahead. You know what I mean? If you want to,
absolutely.
If you want to play with no pedals, cool. If you want to play a vintage instrument, fine. If you want to play a new instrument, that's fine. But what's interesting is that, again, with the seeming never-ending need for humankind to draw some kind of herd mentality into something, you know what I'm saying? It's like I know guys who are like, well, in order for music to be real legit, you got to play it on a vintage instrument. And as you were saying, there are certain things that vintage instruments do that can't be replicated on something else. But the music doesn't care necessarily. It's whatever really tool in the moment that is to inspire the person to make the best amount of best music in the moms, as I like to say. And whether that means you're playing an vintage instrument or not doesn't really matter. By the same token, if you're feeling it with just a chord and an amp and that's cool, fine. If you feel like, hey, I want to use these weird effects, that's all well and good. But there always just seems to be such a, someone's got to wear a badge. You know what I mean? I'm a vintage guy and therefore I am valid, or, or whatever the case would be. And it's just kind of interesting. And to the other point too is that people get so caught up in the consumer aspect of being a guitar. But again, I think, who cares? If that's what you want to do and that's what's fun for you, fine. But truly, as you well know, you could be held up in a corner with one guitar, one little amp, and one chord and find a way to make music, because at the crux of it, that's what we're all in it for to begin with. But there's other people that, and I'm sure you do this, where you teach a Skype lesson or you're hanging out with people and you'll have these people that are fans and they want to hang out with you. They don't necessarily want to learn the stuff. You know what I mean? They just want to be around it. And again, that's cool too. You know what I mean?
Cool too, yeah. And I do think that, there are times when I'll get a new pedal or a new instrument or a new amp, and it does inspire me to go down a path maybe I wouldn't have gone down. And for a while, it might make me want to play more. But, at the end of the day, we've all seen those guys at vintage guitar shows that are trying out the $250,000 59 Les Paul through an amp that they've got the master on 1 and the preamp on 10. And it doesn't matter what guitar you have plugged into that amp. I don't know how so, if you're a vintage guy, if you don't have a certain level of proficiency, there's no way you're going to bring out the character of the instrument. I mean, sorry.
Right.
You're not going to. You're not going to be able to fully get what makes those vintage guitars special. And there are a lot of vintage guitars that are dog guitars, but right. They're not all great. There are so many great new instruments and new amplifiers out there right now. I mean, I could make you a list of 5 guitars and 5 amps that are like just phenomenal. And it's such a luxury that we have those things out there right now that you can buy for a fraction of the cost of certain vintage instruments.
Right.
It comes back to, I hate to say it, but like what you're talking about, you got to do the work. And what I found after doing this for a few years is that practice still works.
Oh, indeed.
My practice, it's amazing to me, and lately I've been so caught up in when when I do a lot of sessions, that's not practicing. It's right. Good. I've got a guitar in my hands, but there's a lot of, to get paid as a session player, it's not how fast or how unique. It's like, can you play? Like, can you have? How's your pocket? Can you come up with parts? So I'm playing parts, and I do a lot of acoustic guitar. It's basically strumming or simple finger picking things, and so that's not really stretching my chops. But I've been really busy in my studio, and also I've got I'm like so late to the YouTube party. I've got a new YouTube page, and I'm learning how to do all that. But I'm putting a bunch of videos up, one of which I just put up about getting sounds,
Right.
and before we got into this quarantine situation where I was regularly playing live gigs, I got I go through these phases where I actually have the time to do more practicing, and it makes a tremendous difference. In like, I show up at the gig, if I've practiced like an hour a day for like 3 days the week before, and maybe a little bit that afternoon, and I get warmed up before I go to the gig, I'm a different player.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's so much of why and that's another thing. It's very interesting. I get a lot of questions from guys wanting to know how I set up. They got like I have a pedal with Jetter that Brad and he makes great overdrive pedals that we work together on. And people say, well, how do you set up that pedal? Or how do you set up your Strymon El Capistan delay? And I'm like, well, this is how I set up, but I have a certain attack. I have a really hard attack. And here, not a heart attack, a hard,
Right.
I play really aggressively at times, not all the time. So that the way I set up pedals may not apply to another player at all. And in a very nice way, I say, without seeing you play or hearing and see, but I also want to see how hard you're hitting the strings and where's your pick hitting the string, what kind of pressure are you using with your left hand, and then I could give you better advice and I could probably, I think you and I both, we can look at an beginning intermediate guitar player, and in 5 minutes make 3 or 4 suggestions. And if they actually practice it, their playing can go to a different level really quickly. And
right.
It's so how do you set your pedals? I mean, like, I plug into, I did a record with Robben Ford many years ago, and I did some touring with him, and I plugged into his rig, and I sounded just like me.
Right.
And it doesn't sound anything like Robben Ford. I plug into Eric Johnson's rig, and it's like a bull in a china shop. His touch is so light, and there's so much delay. And the way I play, it's off. I mean, it sounds like, but he has dialed it in to his touch. Just
right.
And that's what when I hear guys that have their own sound and really know how to use gear, that's where they're coming from.
Right. I can dig it. It's crazy.
But it's fun.
I'll tell you what.
It's fun.
It's been well, it is fun. It never gets old. I mean, I do like messing around with gear, but I just like playing. You know what I mean? I just sit down and just start playing. And then I'll go back. I'm just such a teeny bopper still. I mean, it's like, I'll go back and play along with Zeppelin records. I love it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And people are posting old bootleg stuff. And I'll go on and I'll listen to old Hendrix bootlegs and Cream. And then I'll go to the blues thing and go, do the deep dive there. And all. But most of it is just, I don't care what I'm playing. It's whatever's at the moment. But I did want to mention one thing when you were talking about the gear in terms of vintage versus like newer stuff. Someone asked me the other day on the Intergoogles, they said, well, when do you play your 53 Tele as opposed to your Reverend guitar? And the best comeback I could, and this was a tweet, so I just tweeted back. I go, well, the 53 is a special occasion guitar, and the Reverend is an all occasions guitar. And it's because I love the sound of my 53 Tele, but I like it clean. Partially because if I put any gain on it, the neck pickup howls like a beast, and I just don't want to get it redone.
Yeah.
But that's what's so glorious about the guitar. It just sounds so good clean, and it's so fun to play with that tone. I just don't want to mess with it. But I can't really, I mean, I do take it out to gigs, and I will find a couple of tunes to play on it. But usually I'm on the bridge pickup, because if I go to the neck pickup land, it's just going to howl like a pig.
Yeah.
But playing around the house, it's magnificent. But a newer instrument to me, I mean, I've tricked out my Reverend to be exactly what I need for a performance vehicle. And so therefore, that's a guitar I prefer to play. But so many times when you do a signature instrument, the observer wants to think it's all about the money. And, of course, you got to figure out ways to have income stream. But the first and foremost thing is the guitar has got to be inspiring. Am I right or am I right?
I mean, I wouldn't play a guitar that didn't inspire me. I don't put my name on anything or endorse anything that I don't believe in. I think
Right.
that comes down to integrity too. I mean, if I just, it's got to be something I'm going to use all the time, or at least a lot, or on especially with pedals. I don't use the same pedals on every. I have 3 pedal boards, and
Right.
one has 4 pedals, and one has 8, and then one has like 12 for studio stuff. And I think that I will say that I think finding the right gear enhances your ability to translate what you hear in your head and what you want to hear come out of the speaker, to the speakers. I think that there is, I mean, for me personally, the different, having a great, a couple of guitars and an amp. For the average player, a couple of guitars and maybe a couple of amps, and then really bonding with those instruments is I mean, I just feel better when I pick up a guitar I've been playing a lot lately. It's kind of, you keep it alive. I don't think as much. And I think having good, and another, like little things like cables can really change the sound, and people don't think about cables that much, or they balk at paying $100 for a guitar cable. And I've A/B'd several of them. I use Astro cables. I hear a difference. I like them. They sound better than anything else I've tried, and it makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
Well,
in the guitar, it's kind of funny, we are doing this interview under the auspices of our friends at Wildwood Guitars, which every time I go out and I have to play all those guitars every day, one of the reasons I think the videos are effective is because going through my mind every time I'm playing guitars, should I buy this one?
It's an expensive trip. You go there to make money, and it costs you money by the time you leave Wildwood. That's
exactly,
or it could, and not,
exactly. Although I have taken many instruments, but it's one of those things where it's, I have to, obviously, as everyone does, you have to mitigate the addiction anyway. And I do go through phases where I gotta have this, I gotta have that, and then I'll purge, and then I'll get more. And so that's just like a never-ending part of it. But it's all just fun. But at the end of the day, as they say, it's just all about sitting and playing the guitar. And whatever motivates that process is really what we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree.
In a nutshell.
I agree.
Well, listen, my friend, we've come up on an hour. I think that's probably enough for poor Paul Brown to have to put together and have to wait to upload onto YouTube on the Inners Google.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for spending time and spending some yarns with us here in our first installment of, I don't even know what we're going to be calling this, the Wildwood Interviews or some damn thing.
Well, my pleasure, man. Thank you for inviting me. And all the Wildwood folks, want to send a big shout out to all of them. They're wonderful people, and what a fabulous shop they have. And
well, I'll tell you what, when this pestilence is all over, we got to have you out, because you got to see that new shop. It's magnificent. I can't wait to get back out there myself.
I haven't seen the new shop.
It's awesome. It's very, very tastefully done, and the video lair, the Wildwood lair now is on site, so that makes it even more spectacular. So when the pestilence clears, David, we shall reconvene out in beautiful Louisville, Colorado.
I'm all for it.
All right, my friend. Well, stay safe, and we shall talk soon. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate it.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.